Hemp-It was actually set up in 1964. So we actually celebrated our 65th anniversary birthday. It's the only company in France producing certified industrial seeds.
That's Jean-Eric Ponthou from Hemp-It in France, and this is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Hello, my name is Eric Herlock. Today I will be talking to Jean-Eric from Hemp-It, as well as Robin Destiche from KonopiUS. We're going to be talking about hemp seed, right? What it takes to propagate hemp seed for the industry. We'll hear about the hemp industry in France and all sorts of neat things. First, we'll take a quick sponsor break and then we'll get into it. This episode is brought to you in part by I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. I&D Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven, and environmentally focused industrial hemp food, feed, and fiber company, providing new opportunities for farmers and rural communities. Their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. Learn more at indhemp.com. This episode is brought to you in part by Impactful Ventures, an investment and incubation company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. At Impactful Ventures, they strive to amplify enterprises that bring innovative, green opportunities to the forefront and empower those making a significant impact for a sustainable future. You can learn more at impactfulventures.org.
The KP4 Hemp Cutter, introducing a revolution in hemp harvesting. Setting a new standard for harvesting quality, speed, and efficiency. The KP4 prepares hemp for ideal retting and easy on-field tedding, raking, and baling. Easy to maintain and designed to withstand the punishments of hemp harvesting. The KP4 Hemp Cutter. Available only at hempcutter.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So here we are. Today's date is actually August 15th. It's a Thursday. I cannot believe the month of August is half over. I can't believe the summer is almost over. Time is flying by. I feel like I have been behind the 8 ball for weeks and weeks now. Have I been bumped from my normal Wednesday schedule? I don't know, but the past couple of weeks I've been publishing on Thursdays. So we'll see. Not to give you too much information, but this week I've been covering for my colleague at work, Candace. She's on vacation, so I'm doing the web production job that I used to do. I'm also recovering from COVID. I don't know if you listened to last week's show, but I had COVID. Today I tested negative for the first time in like 10 days, so feeling great. Very thankful for all of it. So anyway, interesting show for us today. A neat conversation with Jean-Eric from Hemp-It and Robin from KonopiUS. Robin has been on the show before, and he's been just great to talk to about industry things. I've gotten to know him over the past couple years now, and I'm really grateful for the connection. And so when he offered to put me in touch with Jean-Eric, I said yes, absolutely. So I am very grateful to Robin and to Jean-Eric for joining me on this episode. And of course, I'm thankful to you for listening to it. So, all right, I'm just going to play the interview and I'll see you on the other side. Jean-Eric Ponthou from Hemp-It and Robin Destiche from KonopiUS. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Bonjour, good morning. Hello, how are you guys doing?
Hello. Bonjour.
Hi there. Thanks for having us on today, Eric. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Robin, you've been on our show before, and I think folks know who you are, but could you give us just a quick reintroduction of yourself, please?
Yes, of course. My name's Robin Destiche. I'm a founding member of KonopiUS. We're a hemp seed distribution and agronomy company in America. And we have the pleasure of working with Jean-Eric, who we have on the call with us. He's my biggest collaborator in France.
All right. Well, let's have Jean-Eric take it from there. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. So Jean-Eric Ponthou, I'm the manager, the sales and development management manager of Hemp-It. I joined the company about 3 years ago.
Excellent. Welcome to our show. First, I wonder if you could just describe Hemp-It for us. What is Hemp-It?
Hemp-It was actually set up in 1964. So we actually celebrated our 65th anniversary birthday. It's the only company in France producing certified industrial seeds at international standards. So it's a company with about 30 employees, and we work through 130, 150 propagators, and altogether we produce about 2,000 tons of certified seeds on a yearly basis. Yeah.
Okay, and talk about the various varieties that you produce. You're in all sort of aspects of industrial hemp?
Yeah, we produce about 15 different varieties. And each of these varieties are targeting some specific market segments, either grain, seeds, or shive, or fiber.
And can you talk about that? You said you have a facility with 30 employees, and then you work with a network of propagators. Is that sort of like a co-op? Are those farmers out in the countryside growing your seeds for you?
Yes, you're right. It's a co-op company, which means every farmer has one share in the company, so they're all equal. And everything, all the seeds are produced within a protected area, which was defined by a decree in France in 2019.
What are the requirements for someone to start growing hemp in France? Is there a licensing process or a permitting process?
Actually, if you want to produce hemp in France, you need first to declare your cultivation by the so-called CMA interbranch company. So they must know exactly what is produced where and where.
Okay.
And you're allowed to produce hemp if you pick up one of a variety which is registered either in the French or the European catalog.
Jean-Eric makes a good point. Europe operates off of a database. And so once the varieties are tested for 3 years independently, they can be submitted to the European variety database, where I think currently there's over 100 hemp varieties that are registered. And so if you prove that, or if you show the documentation, the certification, that it's one of those varieties, you're able to grow, thereby bypassing the COA because it's been already tested for morphology, stability, and THC.
Okay. So you're not having government officials show up on the farm testing your crops?
Actually, you do. The crops is checked all the way through. So as I said before, you need to declare where you're going to grow hemp, and then they come to check the kind of viruses or organisms which you could find on the crop. And if ever you find some, it's listed. And they also check that you follow some rules when conditioning the seeds at the end of a chain.
All right. Among the network of farmers, are they growing exclusively hemp, or are they growing other crops as well? Is it just part of their rotation?
Actually, where we live, we're in the Loire Valley, and it's a valley which could be called the seed valley, because a lot of international firms are actually growing seeds there. I mean, they grow wheat seeds, corn seeds, and flower seeds, and so on, because the soil is very good for that.
Yeah.
So they generally have a a package or a portfolio of different cultivations. And I would say it's also a requirement because, for instance, if you consider hemp, you mustn't get hemp more than 3 years in a row in the same field. So crop rotation is actually a key point also with hemp.
How much seed are you producing? You said, what, 2,000 tons
so
of...
What I can say, we produce between 1,500 and 1,800 tons per year, depending also on the yield. And we sold this season 2,000 tons. Actually, the key point is to get a backup stock because at the end of the day, you don't know how big the demand will be.
Right.
So the more we get feedback from our clients, the better it is to anticipate the growth.
Right. Are you sensing a lot of growth in the industry? And I guess what I'm asking is there enough seed for next year?
Luckily, we anticipated the growth until now. And as I said before, we had a backup stock. So we tried to get something like 40% backup stock to face the increasing development of hemp. Yeah.
Where are you seeing the development come from? Is it from the U.S. or are there other parts of the world that you're sourcing seed for?
I would say there's still a big gap between Europe in general and the rest of the world when talking about hemp. But it's natural because we are talking about 60 years of development. So research and development help also to develop some new brands, and industrialists also have gained a lot of experience. And recently, what we noticed is textile. Actually, textile is growing pretty fast because people have reached a new step, which is profiting by long fiber hemp. Yeah, and to do so, they need hemp to go through a varieting process and then the scratching process, and saying so. Flax producing companies or farms have had so much experience with long fiber that they are the ones coming up on the market and with a high interest in hemp.
Right. Yeah, there's quite a bit of interest here in the U.S. now with flax.
I think in the flax industry, one of the main issues we had to face was they had very poor seasons recently. Which means that they couldn't make any profit out of their cultivation, and then they turned to new species to try to manage risk in a better way. And it proved that hemp was very interesting because when you produce flax, you need to change species you can't have flax more than 6 or 7 years in a row. So actually hemp proved to be very good because after 6 years you could get hemp for 3 years. And yeah.
Getting back to the network of co-op farmers, how much hemp are they growing, acre wise or hectare wise?
We get the potential of using 6,000 hectares, and they use between at the moment 1,800 hectares. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1,600, 1,600, 1,800. Sorry, 1,600, 1,800. Yeah.
Right. Okay. 1,600 to 1,800, and that translates to about 2.5 times that for acres, right? So 1,600 hectares is, let's say, 3,700 acres. All right, I got it. Robin, you were going to do some math on grain yields. Did you Did you make some calculations there?
Yeah, so if we take 2,000 tons times 2,000 pounds per ton, and we divide that by, call it an average of 35 pounds an acre, maybe less for grain, more for fiber. Quick math says about 114,000 acres of planting seed, give or take.
Oh, okay. Right. 114,000 acres of planting seed. And that's across all varieties.
Right, that's just a general
Okay.
middle of the road number.
Right. So, Jean-Eric, how did Hemp-It get into the seed propagation business in the first place? Can you talk about sort of the history of the company and maybe the stages of development?
Yeah, we started 60 years ago. At that time, hemp was still very in, if I can say so. For instance, there's a big city nearby who employed more than 20,000 workers to manufacture ropes. So the demand was very high. But actually what happened in the 50s and then later on in the 60s, the company DuPont in America actually started producing chemical fibers like polyamide, polyester, or lycra. And actually, it kind of reduced the attraction of hemp in the industry. Funnily enough, today, I mean, we are paying more attention to environment and eco-friendly fabrics or biosourced fabrics are becoming something very important for the future. So actually, what happened is still though farmers continued propagating hemp seeds. Some of them have been producing actually hemp seeds for more than 3 generations. So they kept up with this experience, and they haven't given up. And that means that today they are ready to answer the international demand.
That's amazing. So you've got some third generation hemp farmers over there.
Yeah. And when you consider what happened elsewhere, because hemp was associated with cannabis, it was associated with a narcotic plant. Some governments simply prevented farmers from producing hemp any longer. If you consider, for instance, countries like Argentina with a dictatorship, I mean, they simply dropped off hemp, yeah. And today they are trying to get it back in the country, yeah.
Yeah. Imagine the world if we hadn't prohibited cannabis 80 years ago. Imagine how.
There's quite a bit of literature out there if one goes digging, and you can find reports from the USDA, the Farm Bureau, and various intergovernmental agencies in America about production in America. And we had our own domestic varieties. We had our own domestic breeding programs, and it all just came to a grinding halt there 80 years ago. It's such a shame we lost those genetics. At that time, they're just not there any longer.
Right. We also lost those sort of advances in technology that other crops, other commodities experienced in the 20th century. So there's a lot of catch up to do, but also maybe we get to sort of skip over a lot of the mistakes, and now we can apply that technology sort of more purely to the crop. And so I'm always looking for silver linings, right? Like, so what's the silver lining from 80 years of prohibition? Crickets. Yeah, I'm not sure what the silver lining is.
I don't understand what you mean by silver lining. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So I guess it's a idiomatic phrase in English where if there is something bad that happens, there might also be something good that comes from it. So
All right.
I think
Yeah.
the metaphor is about a storm
Yeah.
cloud, like a gray storm cloud might have a silver lining and it might
Yeah.
be good.
But it's interesting what you're saying, yeah, because if you consider America, initially the the attraction for hemp was related to the drug application, actually the
Me-
narcotic application.
The medicinal use. Yeah.
And now they are you are trying to get industrial development in for shy fiber and so on. Yeah. In Europe, it was exactly the opposite. I mean, we started gaining experience in the industrial sector, and now it's like the interest for CBD or THC and medical THC is growing, and sometimes it's blurring the message. I mean, we get clients calling us for CBD, which is, according to us, still a very limited segment of the market compared to construction or compared to insulation and so on. So it's quite interesting to see that the process of the way was totally different in Europe compared to America.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I mean, what is important is that the two continents will meet somewhere.
Yeah, I was surprised in 2019 by the CBD boom because I was focused on what industrial hemp can do for big agriculture, for farmers, and then what those crops can then get turned into from an industrial point of view and from food. So when I started this podcast, I was definitely caught off guard by CBD. And I followed it for a while, but my interest lies in the grand potential of industrial hemp for, building, for consumer goods, for plastics, for pretty much everything. Because for me, it's about climate, it's about carbon sequestration, it's about imagining the world that we want to live in versus the one that we're sort of in now. And I don't know, I'm optimistic that there's the people out there that I'm interviewing. They're building this future that I want to see, and so it's an honor, I guess, what I'm saying, to talk to you today, Jean-Eric, because you're with Hemp-It, and you guys have been doing this for so much longer, and it's fantastic. So I don't know, I get a little what's the word? I don't know. Overwhelmed with how excited I am about the development of this industry. So anyway, let's get back to talking about Hemp-It.
Yeah, but Eric, I fully agree with you. To be honest with you, it's probably my last job in my life, and I kind of like it because I'm in tune with some values for the future. Some positive development for the future are possible through hemp, and I like that because in a way it's a way to help my children for their future. I think what is difficult nowadays is to maybe I shouldn't put it drastically like this, but is to get rid of the past. Very often if you talk about construction, insulation, huge companies have invested so much money, they have the power, and they don't want things to change too fast. If you consider textile with cotton, it's the same thing. I mean, or even chemical products. I mean, it takes time to turn to new fabrics and to change habits. It's actually a matter of habits, but also a matter of capital and money. So the newcomers, you must really invest in the future, and it requires courage, and it requires also time to make things change step by step.
Yeah, it's a slow process.
Yes,
Slow,
but
but
it's all the slower because you need rather much capital, rather much money, because the tools, the manufacturing of the processing tools are huge. And if you don't have these infrastructures or tools, you simply can't make it. And that's actually one of the big issue for Robin and for me as well. For me, I very often say it's the problem of the eggs and the chicken, because if you don't get industries feedback or demand, you don't need to produce too much hemp. Otherwise, you're going to get overstock. And on the other hand, if you don't produce enough, you won't be able to answer the industries, the new industries' demand. So it's quite a complicated process, actually.
yeah. How do you do it at Hemp-It, working with industry to develop the varieties that they need?
There's quite a change, especially this season. We start signing up contracts with some of them because, they have their tools and they need to make it work. And if they don't have quantities, they won't be able to make it. So it's like people are becoming more and more aware that they need to work hand in hand with Hemp-It. Collaboration is the key word in the development of this industry. And on the other side, we get also some scientific programs, research programs, and we also work with big farming companies to make the trials in the fields and to analyze some specific criteria. But if I consider what happened in the past, initially Hemp-It focused on the earliness and the lateness of varieties. That was the key criterion. The next stage was biomass. I mean, the yield in biomass. That means, the more was better, if I can say so. I mean, the bigger was better. But today, we are more focused on the intrinsic quality of the plant. I mean, the quality of fiber, the content of fiber, all this specific qualitative factor, yeah. And this is true for fiber, but if you consider the food industry, that's the same. We are working on the protein yield of new varieties. So that's how we make things progress.
Can you talk about some things in the future that you're working on now?
Most of our efforts, as I said, actually are on the fiber quality of the new varieties and the protein content. Saying so, I mean, the food industry and the textile industry are probably the more demanding industries for the near future.
Okay. And I know you export to the U.S. because I know Robin and KonopiUS, you work with them in the U.S., but can you talk about other areas of the world that you are exporting to?
Yeah, as I said, Europe otherwise, but this is not something new. There were some new countries opening up the gates for hemp, yeah. In South America, for instance, Argentina, I work to make it happen. They accept now importation of hemp seeds from France, Uruguay, Colombia. What else?
So all over the world.
Yeah, South Africa, but we also get some in Asia. Big projects in Asia as well, yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about some of your varieties that have had success here in the U.S.?
Yeah, one of the key factor actually for the US was the lateness of our varieties. Because the US are in a sophomore latitude in general. I mean, most of the states are much more soft than Europe, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, as I said before, I mean, first factor was earliness or lateness. Then what I noticed is that people in general, they want to get as much biomass as possible, which is the first stage. But it's logical, because to get biomass means having more shade, for instance, for construction or
for bedding.
For bedding, yes, or litter,
mm-hmm.
Or insulation, which are probably the most the easiest market to target first. When you don't have necessary the scratching equipment, for instance, or the decorticators. Yeah.
Right.
And having said that, late varieties such as Futura 83, such as Fiber 79 or Muka 76 proved to be very good varieties for the US.
Okay. Have you been following the hemp seed meal story that's been happening here in the US? Where I guess the American Association of Feed Control Officials voted on hemp seed meal as an ingredient for laying hens. And there was some sort of controversy here about the cannabinoid limits that were set in that language. Can you talk about that at all from your perspective in France?
Yeah, I'm also in touch with some companies in the food industry. In general, I think the key question is always the same. I mean, to get, as you said, the lowest THC or the cannabinoid level in the seeds. And we first took this into consideration when dealing with Japan, because Japan didn't want to get any plant imported because of the connection with cannabis. So we developed some new varieties with no THC, which are Santica 27, Santica 17, and more recently, Nationwide 15.
Okay.
And that means we this way we open the gate to the food industry because we can guarantee them to get the lowest rate of THC as possible.
Wow. Okay. So this language for hemp seed meal in the U.S. doesn't. You can meet those limits, is what you're saying. So not a big deal.
No, because we develop the right variety for that. Yeah. So it's just a matter of interest. Yeah. It takes to develop a new recipe. I mean, in general, people take about 18 months minimum. Yeah. So it's the interest is growing even in Europe, but still, I mean, there's a long way to go through.
Right. And getting back to that THC-free variety, I mean, connect that for me to the importance of certified seeds.
Yeah, I didn't go into details when talking about certified seeds, but to get a certified seeds gives the farmers a certain number of guarantees. First guarantee is probably the THC level, because it's now the limit is 0.3%, and before it was 0.2. So you're sure to be within this boundary. But the number two is the germination rate. So you're sure to get a minimum germination rate of 75%. And then another one, which is very important, is the purity rate. You know that 98% of what you're going to get will be hemp seeds. And I heard stories with new developing markets of people having experience where they thought they would grow hemp, but they ended up growing different kind of varieties and different kind of species, which were not necessarily hemp. So it's actually a very, very important guarantee for farmers, a guarantee of quality and safety, because they're sure that their cultivation, their crop won't get hot.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think this conversation sort of came out of a conversation that Robin and I were having about seed and a possible seed shortage. And maybe I'm making that a little more dramatic than it needs to be. But is there, when should farmers be buying their seeds for next year?
Yeah, it's a very good question, of course, because we have been repeating our clients, but they should come up with feedback much earlier during the season. One of the problem is we need to know in February how much clients will need to order, because that's the time when we decide how much we're going to grow ourselves, and we sign up contracts with propagators. But in February, most of clients, they don't know yet how much they're going to need, because they don't know what the yield of their crop will give back. Yeah. But as I said before, I think there's a bigger and bigger awareness of this issue, and some of the people with big factories, big decortication plants, for instance, know that they must sign up contracts with us. In other words, to tell us, okay, for next season, I will secure that amount of certified hemp seeds.
Yeah, and I'll help color that up as well, Eric, based on that conversation we were having. Right now, the majority of the hemp seed grown in the States comes from China, Europe, Canada. And so we're bringing it in. It's not being made here. And so we're limited in the availability we're able to receive to fill our acres in the US until we create more seed domestically. So as Jean-Eric was alluding to, they have their own farming calculations that they work with, and they try to determine that by February, which you're then looking at an April or May planting with a harvest in the fall, and then that seed is certified for the following year. So there's a bit of a planning process when it comes to working with larger volumes. We discussed the amount of acreage capability that comes out of France. If you have a 50,000 acre farm of hemp you want to do, well, that's half the potential available supply will not be available in entirety. So as we continue to scale up our industry, we have to look at how we fulfill these needs, whether that's going to be grown overseas and sent to us in the US, or whether we have the capability of creating that seed in the US. Underpinning all of this is ultimately the cost and value for the farmers. Because if our seed's too expensive and the farmers can't make any money off of it, they won't grow it. And, we always keep in the back of our mind that this has to be successful first at the farming level. So we need to make sure that we're getting our farmers what they need to be successful.
Okay. And let's say if you buy seed, like non-certified seed from around the world, what kind of risks are you taking?
I'll give my 2 cents, and then maybe Jean-Eric can ping in as well, as he's got extensive global experience. You just don't know what you're going to get. You might get noxious weeds in there. You may get poor germination in there. You may not get a particular species of hemp you're looking for. If you're trying to grow for straw or for fiber, and your supplier sends you a grain variety, you're not going to get much straw. We've seen that before in the past. So it's very important that the farmer and the processor understand the genetics they're getting so it fits the purpose that they need. So there's a number of different reasons to go with certified seed. And I would send it over to Jean-Eric for his thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you, of course. Yeah, but I think the yield in straw is definitely the number one criterion, and now the quality of straw will be the other one. And I will just give you a figure because I said the market has changed recently in France, at least. Now these newcomers dealing with textile, they can make more than 6,000 euros per hectare of turnover. So but to do so, they must get a density which is higher than the standard. Normally, it's 50 kilos per hectare. It's 80 kilos per hectare. So they can't really afford to sow something that they don't know how much they're going to get from. And because it becomes to be a very profitable business. But if you spend more money and you get less, it doesn't work. So you must spend more money and get even more money. And that's the game is around this. So they don't take risk. If you don't want to take risk, you take certified seeds, simply.
Can you talk about some of the other new varieties that Hemp-It is breeding these days?
Yes. First, I would talk about Muka 76. Muka 76 was developed to produce fiber, a better yield, but it ends up also being better in quality because it's a thinner fiber, less resistant, but thinner. And spinner wants to get thin fiber. So it's one example of how things have changed years after years. And another one is Nashinoid 15. Again, it's a variety with a high rate of fiber. So on one hand, it's going to be more complicated to harvest because you get more yield. But on the other hand, the quality of your straw will be higher. And we recently also developed some new variety like Ostara 9 and Mona 16. They are varieties made for the food industry. If you consider Ostara 9, one of the main characteristics of this variety is that the seeds are not falling down, which means it's much easier to harvest because one of the problems is if you harvest too early, you will impact the yield. And if you harvest too yield, they will fall down. So here you have a much wider spectrum of time to harvest, which has a direct impact on the yield of production. And also another thing, another important thing is if you consider Mona 16, for instance, the seed is bigger, and in the food industry you need a minimum size to process the seed. Yeah, so the yield is better, and the size of the seed is better. Yeah, the grain is better.
I was in Prague for the European Industrial Hemp Association conference back in June, and I had a chance to talk to the folks from La Chanvrière. Am I saying? Yeah. Do you work closely with their network of growers?
Yes, and end of this month we have a presentation. We go and present varieties, and we get also we follow them up in terms of agronomic advices. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, it's the biggest player in the world, I think. So it's it's my main customer. Okay. Also in my portfolio. Yeah.
Good. So, there's a hempcrete builder here in the States. Cameron McIntosh, his company is Americhanvre, and he's a hempcrete builder, and he imports all of his hurd, the shiv, from France, and so I imagine if he's getting it from La Chanvière and they're growing your seed, he's building houses out of the hemp seed that you're propagating, right? So I'm just kind of closing the loop there. That's pretty neat. Okay.
Yeah. And the question to raise for me is that should be one of the number one targets for the Americans to produce their own chive. Because chive, you get actually three byproducts but minimum two. It's chive and fiber, because if you very often you don't reach the stage of grain when producing hemp for fiber.
Mm-hmm.
So and chive is probably the most difficult byproduct to sell. So you need to get fiber together with chive all the time to make it perfect.
I think the reason he imports the French hurd is because he has trouble getting a consistent supply here in the U.S. Consistency in terms of the spec. And he uses a spray applied method, and I guess the shiv needs to be exactly the same. So I know they're working towards that. Obviously, the goal would be to have a completely domestic, industrial hemp industry. It's strange to say industrial hemp industry. I guess we just say hemp industry. But yeah, that's fascinating. How are we doing on time? Are you guys okay on time? I know this has been a meandering conversation. Are there some things we want to still talk about? Robin, anything on your mind you want to bring up?
You mentioned which varieties we've been seeing success with. The U.S. is a swath of different geographical zones. Our northern latitudes are about on par with where France multiplies seed. So we have the opportunity to see how those varieties do as they go further south into the drier, more arid climates. And we've seen great success with Futura 83, Xanthica 70, Orion 33. We have Mona, Ostara, and Nationoid in trials this year, because they were just recently to our market. And Muka, although we don't have a robust spinning market, Muka is still a fascinating variety for its finer fibers. So we've been quite successful thus far with these varieties, and we're always excited to hear what else they might be working on for our market.
Jean-Eric, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience about what you're doing there in France?
Yes, there's one point I would like to lay emphasis on. It's not only biomass matters when talking about hemp, and that's something maybe it takes time to figure out. For instance, there's one point that farmers very often forget is will they manage to harvest their crop? For instance, it's too thick. It's going to be difficult. It will cost a lot of money. It will take time. It will destroy some of their machinery. So this is something we progressively became aware of. Second thing is now that we are dealing with newcomers dealing with textile, they want to get hemp stem as thick as a pencil. So it has a lot of impact on the way you grow hemp, on the density, for instance, what kind of input you bring into the soil. And you just mentioned that some people want to get chive. So chive, it would be mainly biomass. So and if you consider Futura 83, for instance, is good because you will get biomass. It will be easier to harvest, and you will make the most out of it. So it's like according to the kind of market segment you want to target. the more you will have to take into consideration what variety is the best, what kind of machinery will I use, and what kind of agronomic method will I resort to. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind. And most of the trials must be oriented towards these different approaches. And probably the next step is what kind of infrastructures and tools do you have in America? So what kind of crop orientation will you choose?
Right, right. So you've been doing this for 60 years or more in France, and here comes, the U.S. We've been doing this for about 6 years or so now. Do you have just like general advice or general hopes about the U.S. industry?
If you remember what I said before, we had different stages. First was lateness, secondly was biomass, and third one was intrinsic quality. And I have a feeling talking with you that America must think about the first stage as well, and must get independency in terms of supply. As you said, for chive, you should be able to make it. It's very good because you can attack the construction industry, you can attack the insulation industry, which are very important industry for the future. And step by step, you will probably gain in experience with fiber and get more and more application with fiber. But I know you already have some big factories working on this, so it will grow faster and faster in the US. I'm sure about it.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, Jean-Eric, thank you so much for your time today. Robin, thank you as well. Offer this chance to say anything else before we wrap it up?
Yes, maybe there's one thing I didn't mention. The change in this industry was due to the arrival of a new machine, the ILO machine, which was actually the adaptation of a flax harvesting machine to hemp. And actually, in Europe, and France at least, the locking point was harvesting. And thanks to the machinery is very important for the development in the future of hemp, also in America for sure. Maybe adaptation to the different varieties existing in America.
And that's a very good point Jean-Eric makes, is the harvesting technology. In the last couple of years, there's been some developments there in the north of France, south of Belgium, from Heiler and from Crites for their, for lack of a better terminology, fiber harvester that's doing a very particular cut and laying that straw down in the field in parallel rows, which you then go through with a flax turning fork, and you turn that over and you get very even retted parallel straw that when you're feeding into a linear processing machine, which is running in a straight line, you're putting that straw through that's matching the design of the machine. And so you're not getting necessarily so many random amounts of different fiber lengths. You're getting a more consistent fiber length quality that also has more open, finer fibers in it. So harvesting technology was a big piece of this puzzle, and we're now seeing that in Europe, and I would expect to continue to see that develop over the coming years. And I think the American market will follow suit in time, but right now it's a discovery process to see how that goes.
Yeah, there's also one point which would be interesting to raise is some of the people, maybe they are dreamers, I don't know, but they'd like to build up the whole processing chain from the field to the fashion industry. So one of their targets is to bring back some spinners in Europe and then to go further and further. You talk about it and you said that everything was made in India and China. But do you think that's something which could be approached by the Americans? Because the challenge of the environment is also connected to this kind of challenges for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a domestic textile industry, fashion industry take root here. It seems like in the 1990s, we sold off all of our equipment and offshored all of our textile plants. And that seems like a really dumb thing to have done, from this perspective. And I think there's a lot of movement now to bring the textile industry back to America. You see folks in North Carolina working on this. So yeah, I hope to see the rebirth of an American textile industry based on natural, agriculturally based fibers. But, I am a dreamer, right? But if we don't dream, if we don't have the, if you're not bold enough to envision the future that we want, then do we even deserve it? So you got to be a dreamer.
Otherwise, to finish with, maybe I think that some big projects will coming up in the US as well, based on hemp, and that will change also Hemp-It's approach in America, because as long as you know the quantity, you're able to make some big plans, big projects coming up. Yeah. If not, I mean, it's difficult to because the interest is growing, I think we will be more and more in a capacity to move forward in that direction.
Okay. So are you gearing up to supply a big sort of order in America for next year?
I don't know. Maybe Robin could tell more than me, but sometimes I get people calling me. I mean, and they want to sign up an NDA. They don't want us to talk about their projects. So I think one day they will come up with some huge projects also in the US. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. I look forward to that.
And Eric, from my perspective, what we are seeing this year is an increased interest of seed supply, as well as early ordering, shall we say. It's not going to come down to putting a seed order in April or May, but having conversations at the end of the previous year to talk about supply. And frankly, that's where the larger conversations need to go, is multiple year contracting for supply. Because as I mentioned earlier, if somebody needs 50,000 acres, that has to be planned for. That's not something we currently have sitting on the shelf, like maybe you can find with a current domestic commodity such as soy or corn or wheat. You can find that supply. Hemp is still not grown in large use. So, for the larger orders, the bigger projects, there needs to be a multi-year kind of planning phase around that.
Okay. And maybe the moral, the lesson of this whole episode is it's never too early to think about next year's crop.
Right. As Jean-Eric mentioned, they're contracting farmers in February for the following year, and nobody's planted in February. It's not even on the radar for a lot of people. So just having the forward thinking to know that, if I want large supply, I need to plan that.
All right. We'll leave it there. So merci. Right. Thank you both so much. I appreciate your time, Jean-Eric and Robin.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Oh, wow.
And just like that, the show comes to an end. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or anything, you want to send me jokes. I would love to hear jokes. Anyway, you can always email me. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Yeah, check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Sign up for our newsletters. We have a revamped newsletter thing happening, so check it out. Check it out. Very exciting. So anyway, I gotta go. They're kicking me out, actually. This is weird. All right. No, seriously. I'm doing a show here. What do you mean I have to leave? Really? All right. Okay.
industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Harlock. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.